We're going to start. Can everybody please take their seats? This meeting is called to order. Statement of meeting notice. Adequate notice of this meeting was given to the public 48 hours in advance of the date setting forth in time, location, and type of meeting. Notice was sent to the Daily Record, the Observer Tribune, and the Washington Township Clerk, and was posted on the district website at www.WTSCHOOLS.org. All please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending our meeting. I'd like to thank our tech guru, Randy, for making this meeting possible, and to Chief Ulmer for being in attendance tonight. I'd like to start today's meeting by saying congratulations to our forensics public speaking team on a job well done at the tournament last month. First place went to Olivia Budd, who I'm told competed for the very first time. Second place went to Izzy Bartiromo. Third place went to Sydney Hammer. And fourth place went to Ardashini Vinod Das. Great job to you all. And now for the superintendent's comments.
Jessica, thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin tonight certainly by taking this opportunity to express my appreciation once again to everyone who has supported children so mightily throughout the course of this year. We know the year was filled with uncertainties. The pandemic fills our own lives with uncertainties, and I am certain that holds true for our young people as well. And my faculty knows, if in the end the children have been well cared for, that's huge. So I want to take a moment also to acknowledge once again our classroom teachers and our staff. I'm not teaching in a pandemic. I'm just the superintendent of schools. But each day and each night, our teachers, to no one's surprise, I'm certain, have worked tirelessly. They've worked selflessly to ensure that the children weren't only well taught, but as I said moments ago, well cared for as well. And that they felt safe and secure in, yet again, what must be a very uncertain time in their lives as well. Together, our teachers have planned and delivered full instructional days to their students since day one. Truly an uncommon and amazing feat on the part of a truly outstanding group of professionals, and even more importantly, a truly outstanding group of people. Our teachers continue to demonstrate to our community and certainly to the profession that when you teach with care, when you teach with guiding hand, when you teach from the heart, that makes all the difference in the lives of young people. And that's what you've done, faculty. Every step of the way, you've inspired, you've supported, you've encouraged our young people, and as I said, with much care and a whole lot of heart. And I'd like to take this opportunity, for those of you who are at home, for everyone here, please join me in giving a round of applause to the entire staff and faculty of our Washington Township schools. I also want to congratulate, got a little congratulations, I have one as well. I want to congratulate all of the members, including our newest inductees to our National Junior Honor Society, now in its 10th year. My goodness, I remember when we had our very first ceremony a decade ago. But last Wednesday evening, via Zoom, of course, the pandemic did not hold us back. We had our ceremony, and the kids were just, wonderful, brilliant stars on the screen that night, and a lot of pride emanating from the families, because obviously we're all in each other's living rooms during these types of get-togethers. But congratulations to all of our inductees, to our current members as well, and a huge thank you to Mrs. Krista Smith. Krista is a social studies teacher here at the Long Valley Middle School, and we want to thank her for leading and advising this society now in its 10th year. Incredible. So Krista, if you're out there or if you're home listening, thank you very much, and congrats again to all of our inductees. Last night, I sent out a communication to our community. We weren't particularly happy with the news of going orange in our region after 1 week of being in yellow. But the board and I have had a lot of small meetings and small group meetings. We've met with our faculty, and we do see a lot of positive signs on the landscape ahead. Just tonight I heard 4 stories of vaccines, which is nice, from people in our audience. We see our numbers hopefully declining in our region as the news just seems to be a little bit brighter for this COVID landscape that we've watched unfold now, my goodness, since last March, a year ago. We are looking to mid-April, and I want to explain why. When you're trying to invite children back to in-person learning, you want to make sure it goes as well as it can possibly go. That's number one. We also know that as I said at our last meeting, that I want to see, our health professionals want to see a continued downward trajectory of things like positivity rates, things like case rates, not only in our region, but also in our township. We've had a lot of activity recently, in recent days. And we just want to make sure that we see that downward trajectory continue. Because when we open, we want to do our best to stay open. We don't want to have this pandemic shut us down on what should be a very celebratory occasion. We're looking forward to hopefully improved statistics as we move forward. I think that'll give us all a lot of confidence and certainly something to look forward to. The spring weather is certainly going to help us, with increased ventilations and certainly the outdoor breaks being perhaps even longer with the warmer weather. I cannot underscore certainly enough that once we return, we are definitely increasing the likelihood of folks becoming contacts. I'd like to think more so today than it would be a week from today or 2 weeks from today, or certainly after spring break, because again, all signs are pointing to an improved landscape as we move forward. The last thing we want to do is open too soon and send children home for 14 days. It's happening in communities around us. Every community is different. Every community makes choices that it thinks is the right choice to make at the given time. Our goal is when we open is to stay open, and to stay open right through the end of June for our elementary students. But we have to make sure that we are smart about this. I know of districts that have 60, 70, 80, 90 children that are in quarantine. Not only can they not come to school, but obviously their lives are shut down as well. So we just want to proceed again with looking forward. There are going to be more communications coming to you because we're going to need some information, from you, our parents, as we plan for a full-time return to in-person learning. Still not 100% certain whether we'll try it all at once or do it in 2 stages over the course of the week. We may do it concurrently. It's all going to depend on the information that we have at hand at the time of that decision making. We're going to need as many folks as possible. Chief Ulmer, you probably don't want to hear this, but we need as many people as possible to forego the bus and drive to their schools. Thanks, Jeff. We do have room on the bus, but we want to maintain only siblings riding in those same seats together. for obvious reasons. We also want to get a sense ultimately of how many people will actually be returning. We get a sense that about 1,460 children will be returning, or at least their parents are considering a return. What we will do is we will be sharing something with you next week so that when you make that decision, you'll know exactly what's going to be happening inside the school so that you can make an informed decision as to what is best for your child. We do have folks that are in cohort D that are considering coming back. Some are not considering coming back at all. Please know that we respect every decision that you make as parents, because you are your children's parents. We will continue to operate with our remote learning option for families. We're not going to be a district, and haven't been a district that has had people locked into that from the start of the year. We've been very flexible with folks either going from AB to D or D into AB multiple times, sometimes during the course of the school year. But I have to tell you, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's such a huge step for us as a community. And we're going to continue to work together to monitor health, not only the health of our faculty, they do that every single day before coming to school, but the health of our young people as well. There definitely will be school exclusion protocols will remain in effect. We're hoping that those situations will be few and far between. And again, it definitely correlates with the landscape at the time in terms of what's happening with COVID activity levels, not only in the state, but more importantly in a region and closer to home, right here in Washington Township. We are going to need the help of every in-person family to recognize the significant shift that we are considering and likely to make. Right now we're orange, and oddly enough, we've seen an uptick in cases, unfortunately affecting our young people and affecting adults as well here in our school community. There's great promise of lots of vaccines on the horizon, as I mentioned before, and hopefully appointments becoming more plentiful, as I mentioned at the start. But everyone's personal vigilance is what's either going to make this or break this. It's just the way it is. We need everyone to do their very best inside the school, which is a little difficult when you have lots of people back. But our teachers understand the protocols, they know the protocols, they've lived the protocols, but we need everyone outside the school to be as vigilant as well. I always say it's not necessarily where you go, it's what you do when you get there. I believe people can go about their personal lives safely, as long as we collectively adhere to those key mitigation strategies that the CDC has been preaching now for a good part of a year. I also want to reiterate that none of the decisions regarding this school year have been routine. They've been extremely time-consuming, lots of readings, lots of conversations, lots of collaborations, lots of guidance constantly being reviewed. We're still waiting for the Department of Health to come out with some hopefully good news, revised guidance. We haven't seen a document since January 19th. We hear they're delayed right now because they are really thinking about how they can develop a K-12 guidance that best supports children returning to school while not sacrificing any of those key mitigation strategies. So I know they're working hard at that, or so I am told. And as always, we're going to continue to share updates with our school community. Watch again next week, because there's going to be some of those quick turnaround questionnaires, for you, certainly next week and the week after. The response is always fantastic, so we certainly thank you for that. That information, the information you provide, helps us very much structure our steps moving forward and what school life will look like in each and every classroom, how many children we can count on being present, etc. But rest assured, if your child is not present, as I said from the start, giving a big shout out to our teachers, they will be well taught and they will be well cared for. If this goes well, it'll just be such a huge step for not only our children, but for parents and faculty and staff as well. Better to do that, as I told the board, better to do that before the end of the school year than go through an entire summer and have that first experience in September. It'll bring confidence. It'll also bring a notion of what our young people can expect. Many of them, remember, will be meeting their classmates in person for the very, very first time. And we're going to plan, for that. It'll be quite a reunion when we open our doors. Again, we're targeting mid-April. If it's sooner, we'll all be the happiest people on earth. And I'm not going to rule out that it would be sooner. But certainly we felt that mid-April was an appropriate target date, giving this landscape a chance to improve. Jessica?
Before we continue, I just want to ask, ma'am in the back row, if you could wear your mask over your nose. This is school grounds. Thank you. Correspondence. Emails from the following: A. Field, J. Coladarcy, M. Riccadella, A. Hennessy, J. Shepard, N. Curioni, T. Eek, M. Klein, A. McCann, S. Branco, M. Edwards, A. Mesa, W. Curioni, T. Trabella. Committee reports. Education Committee.
Education met on February 16th at 7 p.m. In attendance, myself, Ellie DeMayo, Jill Mercerino, Stephanie Wilson, Debbie Russo, and Jeff Moore. We welcomed Mrs. Debbie Russo. Jeff introduced Mrs. Debbie Russo to the committee members. Mrs. Russo is the district's new district coordinator of teaching, learning, and intervention support services. Mrs. Russo expressed her excitement for her new position and her unwavering commitment to working with faculty to the best support the children of Washington Township schools. CDC's February 12th guidance for K-12 schools. The committee discussed the Center of Disease Control's guidance. Key clarifications are needed regarding community, county, regional COVID-19 statistics and the 5 core mitigation practices: mask wearing, hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette, building cleaning and disinfecting, and contact tracing, especially physical distancing. Much of the document prescribed what Washington Township schools is already doing, which resulted in our schools reopening for in-person learning on September 1st. Jeff will seek clarification from local Board of Health during his upcoming Thursday conference call. Mental health curriculum, school council involvement. There was discussion regarding the district's efforts to support social and emotional learning during the pandemic period. Jeff noted that the school counselors, in conjunction with principals and faculty, have developed activities while supporting both children and families on an individual basis. Jeff is in the process of obtaining updates from each school and will provide specific information at the committee's March 2nd meeting. Road back chart. We are in conversation with district leadership and our health professionals with regard to a full-time return to in-person learning in a safe and healthy manner. We do understand that as conditions change, our plans need to be adjusted accordingly. The health and safety of our students and staff remain our primary focus in any decisions that are formulated. School budget overview 2021-22, curriculum and technology. Jeff shared key budget items planned for 21-22, which included instructional pre-K through grade 8 materials, electronic resources, and Technologies. He noted that monies are also being allocated for professional development purposes. And we had another meeting on March 2nd. Present, myself, Kelly DeMayo, Jill Marcerino, Stephanie Wilson, and Jeff Moore. The improving COVID-19 landscape. The committee discussed the potential return to full-time in-person learning, pre-K through 5, which would need to include a 3 to 6 foot physical distancing guideline. It is important not to make any hasty decisions based on yellow moderate regional COVID-19 activity announcement on last Friday, February 26th, as activity levels can fluctuate. The district would need to see a continued downward trajectory based on future Department of Health reports to potentially reopen K-5 in mid-April. Opening prematurely may result in children and adults being quarantined for spring break. Opening immediately after spring break was not recommended due to potential unknown exposures as occurred during the recent winter recess. Challenges regarding a return to full-time in-person learning for Long Valley middle school students were discussed and included the size of the student body, the smaller, more traditional size, square footage of classrooms, the cross-cohorting that would result due to physical education and related arts classes, the greater potential for student-to-student, adult-to-student, and student-to-adult transmission due to the need to reduce social distancing requirements and the age of the students, and the increased potential of student contacts. Long Valley Middle School leadership is currently planning for fewer in-school restrictions should the yellow moderate trend continue in order for students to experience an increased flavor of middle school life. A return to full-time in-person learning has not been ruled out as the COVID-19 landscape may continue to improve in the weeks ahead. A post-spring break pause is not planned at this time. The district is currently working to identify potential staffing issues associated with spring break travel. A communication has gone out to parents to inform them that the quarantine guidelines for travel outside the 5-state perimeter, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Connecticut. The district has issued a questionnaire to parents regarding their non-binding preferences to increase in-person learning, cohorts A, B, and C, or to remain in remote virtual learning through the end of the school year, cohort D. A communication is being planned for parents, staff, and faculty. The 2021-22 school calendar draft. An overview of the 21-22 school calendar was provided by Jeff Moore. A start date will be placed on the draft calendar based on the substantial completion date of the Old Farmers HVAC project to be completed this summer. Jeff will confer further with Liz George, School Business Administrator. The calendar will be recommended for adoption at either the March or April Board of Ed meeting. Ongoing formative assessments. Due to the overall length of the meeting, ongoing formative assessments of student progress will be discussed at the committee's next meeting. SEL update for the committee. Due to overall length of the meeting, the social emotional learning update will be discussed at the committee's next meeting. The end.
Good job, Carmine.
Finance and Facilities.
The Finance and Facilities Committee met on Tuesday, February 23rd. In attendance was myself, Jason Kostenblatt, Jose Lorenco, Justin Kinney, Jeff Moore, and Liz George. The committee discussed the status of the 2021-2022 school budget. Ms. George shared that the district received an ESSER2 allocation from the state as a result of the federal stimulus money that was passed in December. The district received a total of $331,394, of which a minimum of $25,000 needs to be targeted to learning acceleration and $45,000 for mental health supports and services. The state has not yet released the final guidance regarding the grant application, but has indicated that it will be released mid to late March. The funds can be spent from March of this year through the next 2 fiscal budget cycles. It appears that there are no supplant restrictions. The governor's budget address was given and indicated that there would be additional funds in the proposed state budget for education in order to fund the state aid formula. It is expected that the S2 law, which reallocates state aid, will continue to be implemented and that the district will lose additional state aid for the upcoming year. State aid is due to be released no later than Thursday, February 25th, and Ms. George indicated that she would inform the committee once she received the numbers. The committee discussed the appropriations side to the budget, and Ms. George indicated that the budget was very close to being in balance, given the anticipated revenues that have been used in the projections, and provided the following updates that have occurred since the last committee meeting. The administration is currently reviewing the initial ESSER2 guidance to determine the impact on offsetting other revenue sources. The initial health benefit renewal numbers are not as bad as initially expected. And the budget now incorporates savings of 4 retirements that are effective for July 1st that will be backfilled at a lower step on the salary guide. Ms. George also reminded the committee that the short-term note issued as a result of the successful January 2020 referendum would be due to be paid back during the 2021-2022 budget cycle. Since the debt is funded via state aid grant and money already in the capital reserve, there will be no tax impact. However, since the amount will be included in the total, it will make the overall budget amount skewed. The committee had discussed regarding the overall tax levy to support the general fund. There was discussion of the effect on the budget, both short and long term, should the tax levy be reduced to under the 2% cap. It was requested that at the next meeting, the administration review the impact with the committee in more detail. The Facilities and Finance Committee also met on March 2nd. In attendance were myself, Justin Kinney, Jason Kostenblatt, Liz George, and Jeff Moore. The committee discussed the status of the 2021-2022 budget. Ms. George provided an overview to the committee of the highlights. The major driver for the 2021-2022 budget is the $1.5 million or 18% reduction in state aid. The state aid number was consistent with what the district was projecting. There is an overall 2% decrease in the operating budget. State aid decrease partially is offset by a statutorily available local tax levy increase of $712,000 or 2%. Due to not going to cap last year, the tax impact is 1.4% for next year. The budget does not utilize $461,344 available in banked cap as a result of not going to cap in the previous year. The increase equates to approximately $70 a year for the average assessment using last year's assessment of $439,000. A $100,000 reduction in the tax levy would reduce taxes by approximately $8 per year for the average assessed household. The budget incorporates additional ESSER2 money received, of which $25,000 is targeted to learning acceleration and $45,000 to mental health services and supports. The budget decrease is being absorbed by a staffing reduction, which is one administrative position which was eliminated, which was that of the assistant superintendent, as well as retirements that are going to be backfilled at lower salaries. Changes in special education population, we have 3 out-of-district placements that are aging out, so reduced tuition and transportation. Decrease in charter school population, we have 2 less students. And a slight reduction in the facility budget of $170,000, less from the prior year budget. The 2021-2022 budget will be able to preserve the following: class sizes, the current level of student programming and services for ESL, gifted and talented, academic assistance, supports for students with IEPs. Technology infrastructure and investment for the one-to-one initiative. Teacher supports, including coaching, professional development, instructional resources. The budget also reflects the payment of notes due in July 2021, issued as authorized by the January 2020 referendum. A one-time payment will make the year-over-year comparison skewed. Funded by money in the capital reserve and debt service aid, no additional taxes will be used for the repayment. After withdrawal from the capital reserve, there remains $623,000. The committee had a discussion regarding the overall impact that the state aid reduction has on the operating budget, and that next year is year 4 of the 7-year phase of the S2 legislation. It is anticipated that there will be an additional $1 million cut for the 2022-2023 fiscal year.
Thanks, Kelly. Personnel Committee.
The Personnel Committee met on March 1st, 2021 at 8:15. In attendance was myself, Jose Lorenzo, Carmine Capagrasso, and Jeff Moore. Topics discussed. We discussed the Chapter 44 health insurance resignation grievance matter. The district is in receipt of a grievance as filed by the WTEA with regard to PL 2020, Chapter 44. A New Jersey law designed to reduce the health care contributions for certain employees who participate in the New Jersey Educators Health Plan. The committee will select possible dates for a hearing, and the association grievance will be coordinate accordingly. Budget developments for 2021-2022 based on enrollment projections for the 21-22 school year. Class sizes and staffing will remain stable as reflected in the draft 21-22 school budget. And lastly was a confidential personnel matter. The committee discussed a confidential personnel matter, and the matter will be discussed with the full board in an upcoming closed executive session.
Thanks, Kira. Communications Committee.
Thanks, Kelly. The Communications Committee met on Tuesday, February 16th via Google Meet at 8 o'clock. In attendance were myself, Kira Mitchell, Jill Muserino, Stephanie Wilson, and Jeff Moore. We discussed 4 topics. The first was the draft COVID-19 dashboard. That's now up and operational on our website. If you went to the district website, it's right in the middle of the page. It says COVID Information Hub and includes district communications, the letters we all receive in emails, contract tracing details, faculty staff COVID-19 screening tool, student COVID-19 health screening tool, a link to the NJDOH COVID-19 resources, and a COVID-19 case count for positive persons in a district building. We also discussed, as the other committees did, the CDC's then recent or newest guidance for K-12 schools. Jeff discussed some open questions based on those guidance and how it might impact our ability to get back to in-person learning. He indicated that on the 18th of February, in his regular meeting, he would seek clarification from the local Board of Health. Jeff informed us that the Board of Education committee descriptions have been added to the board's information feature on the district's website. And the last topic we discussed was new language for the district portion, the BOE portion of the district's website regarding emails to the Board of Education. That new language, the group wordsmithed some language and came up with a draft, and that new language now appears on the board section of the district website.
Thank you, Justin. Public comment on agenda items only. Any public comment on agenda items? Go ahead. I'll let you know when you're at 2:30.
Comment on the Education Committee. Can you please share the full results of the recent survey querying parental intent to have their children return to in-person learning? Thank you.
I should have noted, sorry, let me hear this. I should have noted in my report that that would be on the hub that Justin mentioned tomorrow.
Anybody else for agenda items? Okay. Approval of minutes. February 9th, 2021, regular minute meetings. It is hereby moved upon recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approve the following. Motion to approve? Oh. February 19th. You said February 9th? The minutes. Yeah, motion to approve. Did I not say that?
It's not you, it's the mask.
Oh, it's the mask.
It's the mask, it's not you.
Oh, I'm sorry. So how do I, what is she need me to recycle?
I move to approve.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
There you go.
Can I get a second? Thank you. Okay, any comments? All right. Education.
I think we need to vote.
Yes, Education would like to move items 1.
Can we do that?
Jess, hold on.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
That's okay.
All in favor? For minutes?
Is this on the minutes? Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah. Any opposed? Abstentions?
It's working.
Okay. Carmine, sorry.
All right, Education would like to move items 1 through 7 on the agenda.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just, I just have one question,
Yeah, I
on
want to
the,
talk about that too.
is that on the calendar, or?
Yeah, but
Okay.
you first. You first.
My understanding is the only open item is the start date due to the work that's being done at.
Yeah, so normally what we do, we've been doing a really good job working with West Morris Central through the years, West Morris Regional. Our start date, because we have such a major HVAC project going on at the old Farmers Road School, it's going to be difficult for us to open up in late August due to the substantial completion date, which is shortly after mid-August. And then, of course, you know, Humpty Dumpty, so to speak, has to be put back together again. So all those classrooms have to be put back together at Old Farmers. We have to make sure everything's cleaned. We want to make sure our teachers have enough time to, you know, again, set that beautiful stage for the students' return. So, which is why we're leaning towards September 1 on the calendar, very similar, actually exactly as we did this past year, Justin.
Is there any other discussion? Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSica?
Yes. Finance?
Hey, am I not voting?
Is Jose on?
Oh,
I'm sorry, Mr. Lorenzo, I didn't see you. I don't see you on the board.
there's only room for 4, Jose.
It's okay. I'm a yes.
Strange.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll get that calendar out to everyone tomorrow.
That scared me. Okay. Can we go to finance, or are we working on that? Is it okay? Should I keep going? All right. Okay, finance. Kelly? Motion to approve?
Finance would like to move item number 8 on the agenda, motion to accept with gratitude the following contributions: $567.65 from the Cuccinella PTO to be used at the Cuccinella School for teacher grants.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. Roll call?
Mr. Capagrasso,
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes, and
Mr.
thank you.
Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Let me add, Jess, on behalf of the board and certainly myself and Mrs. Kaiser, Mrs. Prusso, thank you to the Cuccinella PTO for supporting the creativity and the ingenuity that we continue to see in our teachers day after day.
Finance would like to move items numbers 9 through 15 on the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
But Jess, can I interrupt? What I'd like to see is maybe approval of 9 through 14, and then I can review some of the budget details.
Okay.
And then we can move 15.
Okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
thank you.
All right, roll call for up until 14.
Mr. Capagrasso?
This is roll call is for what?
This
To
is for
14?
9
Agen-
through 14.
Okay, yes.
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzo? Mr. Lorenzo?
Did we lose them?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino? Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes. Jeff, do you want her to make the motion, or you want to go talk first?
Let me review some of
Yeah.
details of our tentative budget. That'd be great. Brady, I'll leave the microphone right there. I'll follow you. There we go. I got to get out of the way of this. So this is the time of year, every March, where school districts across the state have to adopt what they call a tentative school budget for the forthcoming year. It's tentative because once a board approves that budget, it then is submitted for review by the Department of Education, and they are looking to ensure that our school budget affords opportunities for our teachers to work with our children to realize the New Jersey student learning standards, the curriculum standards that we have throughout the content areas. So they'll be looking at that with a critical eye, and hopefully then they'll get it back to us, which then sets us up for what we call a public budget hearing, always scheduled in late April, per the DOE timelines, and that's when, at that time, we would expect a final budget to be adopted, and that paves the way then for the new school year beginning July 1. This will be just an overview. A grander presentation obviously would be forthcoming in April. But to give you an idea, obviously we start each budget process with some clear goals in mind, and we're always looking for the critical challenges, or in this case with our continued reduction in state aid, our key challenge, which seems to rise to the top since 2018. So what we strive to do, and you heard it, Kelly mentioned in the committee reports, we want to be able to preserve the current programming levels that we have, the services that we offer to our students across the district. We also want to make sure that we're maintaining reasonable class size. We know that's important to us as a Board of Education. It's important to our community. It's important to our teachers as well, and it truly benefits the children. We also want to ensure that as we're teaching all of those content areas, that we have the requisite instructional materials so that teachers have an abundance of resources. Our philosophy is provide curriculum, provide resources, and then get out of the way and let the teachers work their magic in the classroom. It's a good recipe for success. The bigger challenge every year is always, making sure that we can continue to maintain our facilities. They're big, they're not your average sized home, and obviously each year they get a year older. So making sure that we can continue with all of our protocols that we have and make sure that the schools remain in good repair. We also want to make sure that we are ensuring access to the technologies that have become, no surprise, so prominent in the 21st century. We want to be able to continue that one-to-one initiative. We also want to make sure that the technology doesn't dominate the educational program, but striking that balance, making sure that folks have the tools they need, that the children have the tools that they need moving forward. The key fiscal challenge. This began with a piece of legislation called S2 back in 2018. And the Department of Education, this legislation pinpointed about 172 school districts that they felt had received too much state aid since the year 2010. They identified us as one of those school districts, and each year since then, they've been reducing our state aid. We still receive over $5 million, but they're over time phasing in a 7-year reduction schedule, where in 2023, we should be sitting just slightly north of $3 million in state aid. That continues to be our biggest challenge, because a loss in state aid means a loss in revenue that we had counted on year after year after year. So that's the challenge that Kelly was mentioning in her financial reports. That reduction is an 18% decrease in state aid over the previous year, and that equates to a loss of $1.15 million for Washington Township. The Support Our Students group remains very active in our state. They have now expanded, to bring better equity, to all children and all schools, across New Jersey. We've expanded the effort now to include key Board of Education members. In this case, Kelly DeMayo will represent Washington Township schools, and the effort to increase attention and awareness and to rally and communicate with Trenton that, in the year 2021, as things continue to expand in our world, now is not the time to be taking money away from school districts, not only ours, but 171 others. I'm proud to say that school districts that are receiving increases in state aid, many of them are joining in that fight as well, as advocates for our children and advocates for our teachers. There's a timeline that Liz George can recite easily in her sleep, and this is how the budget timeline rolls out from a legislative level. February 23rd, that was the date that Governor Murphy presented his state budget address. And in that address, he very often gives hints about what degree he's going to fund education for the forthcoming year. And then within 48 hours, the state then must release state aid allocations to school districts. And think about it, we're putting a budget together, we're waiting for that number so that we can then adjust accordingly. They didn't do us any favors, we're down the 1.15 million, but it wasn't quite as much as they had promised they would take away. Not sure if that's a gift worth returning, I'm not really certain, but we'll hold on to whatever penny we can get. Then, of course, we go to a tentative budget review and hopefully adoption by the board for the tentative budget, like I mentioned earlier. And then by next Saturday, oddly enough, that budget is then due to the Department of Education. Clearly, Liz and I will be submitting it on the 19th, which will be Friday. We won't wait till Saturday morning to do that. And then about 5-6 weeks from tonight, we will have our public budget hearing, at which time the board would be poised to adopt its budget for the 2021-2022 school year. This is our enrollment slide. Gives you a really good look at what's happening with district enrollment as we complete this school year and head into the next. We know about 15 months ago now, we commandeered a demographic study to get an idea of what our enrollment would be like over a 5-year period. And it's really based on live birth rates. So children that were born into this town and the likelihood that they would attend school 5 years later as kindergartners. But we learned it back then, it was back in November, October 2019, that the elementary enrollment was beginning to level off. No more sharp declines in elementary enrollment. And you can see district-wide, we stand at 1,924 students today. We're projecting approximately 1,915 come September 1st when we reopen and welcome the children back to school. So that whole thought and mindset of the demographer that there was going to be a leveling off, no particular sharp increases, no particularly sharp decreases, certainly is holding true for us. You can see our average class sizes, very, very reasonable. The middle school, the children are moving in all sorts of directions, but class sizes there are reasonable as well. It's just not as finite a calculation as it would be with our elementary classes that tend to be more self-contained. We still have our 2-house structure, our 7th graders going into 8th grade. You can see that number in the middle bottom stands at 209 students projected for next school year. And we take all of this obviously into consideration when we are planning accordingly for the school budget and the year forthcoming. I mentioned at the start, one of our key goals was to preserve programming and services, and there's so many services, thank goodness, that we are able to deliver to children on a daily basis, and that is a key highlight of this tentative budget. We've been able to preserve the array of programs and services afforded to our children. Instructional resources, there will not be a lack of instructional resources in our classrooms. I mentioned the one-to-one laptop initiative. We'll continue to offer professional development opportunities, for our faculty. The access to instructional technologies will remain for faculty, obviously for the children as well. We have an average elementary class size, as you saw on the enrollment chart, the projection of 18. And again, continued facilities maintenance and security at all of our schools. And I'm going to mention security for a moment, because very often we think of security as infrastructure, but security also involves 2 outstanding school resource officers that have served our school and connected with our children and our faculty. They are members of our faculty at this point, Officer Lee and Officer Wurtenberg. And Jeff, we just want to give you a shout out. That was a great partnership that we embarked on 3 years ago, and it's still going strong. What this slide does, a lot of information on it, but it shows you what the current budget is and what the proposed tentative school budget will be, should be, we expect to be, right, next school year. The current budget stands at the $43,827,000 mark. Our proposed tentative budget is $42,960,000 plus the 711, we tack that on as well. So year over year, what we project is our school budget will be $866,839 less than the current year's budget. That is a decrease in the budget, in the dollar amount, by 2%. It also incorporates a $1.15 million decrease in state aid. That's that 18% decrease that I mentioned a bit earlier. So we've been able to overcome that hurdle. This in year 4, we've got 3 more years of hurdles to overcome. It reflects a general fund tax levy increase of 2%. That is the maximum tax levy increase permitted. There is a 2% tax levy cap on school budgets in New Jersey. We did receive the calculation from our township on the average assessed home, and that average assessed home, $436,410, or excuse me, $140 assessed home. The annual tax increase will equal $69.73 for the forthcoming year. The board does have in its reserve, but they have available to them what we call banked cap. It's a board's ability to exercise greater taxing authority based on the fact that it didn't go to cap the year before. And that ability to tax just hangs out there for 3 years, and if you don't use it, they lose that authority. The board has opted not to use that banked cap that was generated in the 2020-21 budget. So the taxing authority was greater for us because of that banked cap, but the board thought it best certainly not to use that during these uncertain times. You'll notice the proposed budget near the top, that $42,960,711. There's an asterisk there. That's important to note because that does not include, as you'll see on the bottom, the transfer of capital reserve in the amount of $2.8 million to fund the debt service in conjunction with the school bond referendum. So you'll remember a year ago, we had a very successful school bond referendum for partial roof replacements here at Long Valley Middle School, at Old Farmers Road School, electrical upgrades at Old Farmers Road School, and a planned HVAC project. The board was taking $2.7 million of the capital reserve monies. That's money it has in a capital reserve account that's grown through the years, coupling that with $1.4 million grant award that the state gave us to pay for that project, and that will be a one-time payment once that project is completed. But we have to account for that, obviously, in the budget. Speaking of grants, the current budget has about $793,000 in grant monies. That's revenue that came into the district. In terms of IDEA monies for special education, the stimulus monies that many districts received. What's some of the others, Liz? There was another one. I know I'm leaving it out. Excuse me? Yep, Title II funds from the federal government, Title III funds to support English language learning programs. And then the proposed budget has $800,000 in anticipated what we call entitlement grants, and that will include what was mentioned earlier, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund grant, where all districts have received money from the federal government to support social emotional programming within schools, and also what the state terms as learning acceleration programs. We are waiting for the guidance to come out on exactly how we are permitted to spend that money, and then we will file our application accordingly. This last slide talks about or addresses the notion or concept of debt service. Understand that the current budget, this year's budget, the one we're living right now, has in it $1.391 million to pay off debt. That debt stems from the bonds that were issued back in 2003 to support the construction of the Cuccinella School and facilities upgrades at all of the district schools 18 years ago. That's a 20-year bond, and that debt payment will fall off in July of 2023. I shouldn't call it a 20-year mortgage, but I think we could all identify with what that would be like. So that debt has to be paid annually as we pay that debt downward based on the expansion and the facilities upgrades that took place in the first decade of the century. The proposed tentative budget has that $5.6 million in debt service. That's because it incorporates the school bond referendum. So the board has to account in the budget for that $1.4 million in state grant monies, but also the $2.8 million that it will take from its capital reserve account. It's not raising new monies, it has that money, but it has to account for it in the budget because, again, the contractors are ultimately going to be paid when that work is satisfactorily completed. Gives you a little overview of the debt service, hopefully, and how that works for school districts. So the budget is still down from last year. The tax levy is at 2% currently, and that's about a little north of $69 for the average assessed home for the 12-month period. Back to you, Jessica.
Okay, Kelly.
Finance would like to move item number 15 on the agenda.
Second. Thank you. Roll call.
Who was second?
Justin.
Mr. Capagrasso?
No.
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
No.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
No.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes. Personnel, Kira? Motion to,
Jason, do you want to read personnel?
Sure. Thank you. Personnel would like to move item number 16, motion to accept with regret the following resignations. Francis Ayas, custodian, Cuccinella School, effective July 1st, 2021, due to retirement after 17 years of service. Rebecca Kwiatkowski, teacher, Old Farmers Road School, effective July 1st, 2021, due to retirement after 24 years of service. Michelle Ricordella, special education aide, Cuccinella School, effective May 1, 2020, due to retirement after 14 years of service. Laura Rabinbus, special education teacher, Long Valley Middle School, effective May 1st, 2021. And Lori Malcolmfin from her stipend position of playground supervisor, Cuccinella School, effective February 23rd, 2021.
do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Oh, I'd like to say something.
Oh, sorry.
To Frank, thank you. Thank you for taking care of the Cuccinella School all these years, making sure that it was clean, spotless, and doing it as a labor of love and care for the children and the faculty that will forever be part of your school family, that's for sure. To Becky Kwiatkowski, gosh, Becky, I remember the Harley and Heloise book that you wrote and had published back in 2013, and you know, that reminds me of how you're always looking to do something different, something unique inside your classroom, and always with great care, always with an eye on the people that matter most inside your classroom, and that is the young people who have had the good fortune of being in your company for 24 years. To Michelle Ricordella, Michelle has been an exceptional teacher aide at Cuccinella School for many, many years. Her caring heart and guiding hand has made the difference in so many of our young people's lives. Michelle, I know you've got bigger plans ahead, and we wish you all the best. And to Laura, Laura, clearly you're not retiring, and I know we exchanged a communication recently, and we'll keep the door open for you, okay? Good luck with your family.
Roll call.
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Miserino?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes.
Personnel would like to move items 17 through 22.
Second.
Comments? Roll call.
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Miserino?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes. Unfinished business. Does anybody have any unfinished business? Okay, new business.
I have an item for new business. This morning, I learned that the district purchased plexiglass barriers for all the desks in preparation for an anticipated reopening mid-April. I was informed by Liz George that this purchase was made, quote, using a state contract which she has the authority to do and the superintendent requested, unquote. At this time, for the sake of transparency, I would like to request that the superintendent and/or the business administrator provide the board with some insight regarding the decision-making process regarding the purchase of the plexiglass barriers versus requiring the use of the already distributed face shields, why this purchase was not discussed with the Facilities and Finance Committee, and where in the budget the $60,000 to make this purchase is coming from.
Yeah, I can begin in addressing that. Liz, you can chime in as well. We know what a year it's been. We're trying to obviously return to in-person learning. My opinion is that the children have been, true troopers in managing their masks, more than some people even ever expected. They've been wonderful. I don't want them to be managing, a mask and a shield. I want them to feel comfortable and as normal as possible in returning. The desk shield, though, doesn't have any proven medical benefit. It does provide a visual barrier for everyone inside that classroom, and it defines every child's personal space. We know that kids will gravitate toward one another. We know that as adults, we like to gravitate toward one another. So as many districts have done, perhaps for medical reasons, but I looked at it a bit differently. How do we define every child's space and send that visual reminder to every child that that space in the middle of a pandemic, when we have 18, 19, 20 children in the classroom, it's just a reminder that we have to respect everyone's personal space. And I think that will help us with our distancing as well. So we discussed that with Jessica and with Kelly last week. Jess, I knew where you stood on it, but I do think it's in the best interest of our children. We also don't know what next year is going to bring, so to have those desk shields or barriers in place, now is the time. Not when we have 8, 9 children in the class, but certainly when we're heading up to numbers as high as 21, 22 children in just a matter of 4.5, 5 weeks.
I have a question.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I have a question, but I didn't know if I was allowed to. Go ahead, Carmine, I'll go after
A
you.
month
Cancel the
ago,
order.
I believe, Jeff, you said that these barriers were not very effective. I mean, if you were going to purchase barriers, they could have been bought a month ago, and the kids would have been in school by now.
I would disagree with that. Mr. Capagrasso, I did not hear that you were interested in returning to school when we were in high orange, and certainly the CDC guidelines are not even recommending a return to school full-time when we are at high orange. Now, I think the board has a decision to make. If you'd like us to retract and pull back on that purchase order, we can certainly do that. Liz and I are here to do what you ask us to do, and if you'd like to do that, we can certainly move in that direction.
I would like an answer to my second question. As the chair of the Facilities and Finance Committee, I would like to know why this was not discussed in my committee prior to purchase.
When we look at all the finance meetings we have, we were clearly focused on the budget process, but we certainly had mentioned that desk shields were a possibility. I even spoke about it at the board meeting last month, that they were not going to be for medical purposes. Again, we're just trying to define personal space for kids to keep everybody safe and at a distance. Again, if you don't want them, we don't have to have them.
Are you gonna?
May I ask a question? If I can't see if anyone else is about to ask anything.
I have one more question. I still haven't found out where the $60,000 to make the purchase that has already been made came from in the budget.
Go ahead, Liz, you may want to address that as anticipated fund balance.
No, it's just part of our general supply budget.
Do we want to? Kira, do you want to ask your question?
Oh, yes. I was just wondering if the teachers were aware that these plexiglass, barriers were going to be going up. I do have family members who are in school with these barriers. There is quite a glare. Some of the kids can't even see the board, so they're on their Chromebooks in the classroom in order to see the board because the glare on the plexiglass. Also, since there are corners on a plexiglass, the children aren't able to completely see the board and they have to go around it in order to see the board. And the children sitting in back of you, especially the children all the way in the back when you have 24 kids, it's very hard for them to see the board in front of them. So I was just wondering if you actually have a prototype of this plexiglass, put it in the classroom to see how it would perform. To make sure the children can actually see the board and it's not an obstruction to them versus a face shield.
The first prototype that we brought in did not meet certainly our expectations. Liz, then you had reached out and spoken to some school districts that use this particular vendor, I believe.
That's correct.
So was the plexiglass put in the classroom on a desk to try at this point, or no?
No, we didn't do that
No.
in our buildings, but we checked with
So-
other districts that are using a similar product.
Okay. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Kelly and I were very much against this and more in favor of the sneeze guards, face shields, finding them more practical and scientifically more effective. So if you are saying there's an offer on the table to retract that, I'd like to make the motion.
I just have one
Is
question.
that what you're saying?
I just had one question. What is the date of delivery of these plexiglass barriers?
That's a good question.
Liz, you don't have a firm date. They were thinking maybe 3.5 weeks.
Thereabouts, yes. And we would have to check to see whether we could cancel the order, but if we can't cancel the order, I'm sure there are lots of districts who can't get them, who weren't able to order them yet, that would be most likely willing to buy them from us.
I'd like to make a motion to retract. Is there anybody second it?
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
Can we just verify what we're roll calling on? It's a little bit hard to hear.
I know, the mask. I'll try. I'm like basically eating this thing. To retract the purchase of plexiglass shields for the classroom. Could you hear that? Yeah, okay.
Before we vote, I just had a question. If we retract and we stop the order, are we going to consider the sneeze guards, the face shields in place of that to effectuate in-person learning in middle of April? Because that, under the CDC guidelines, they seem to be in the same category where you could use one or the other in the event you can't get the 6 feet of distance.
Jill, I would recommend a barrier, absolutely.
So I have no problem retracting it, but I just want to make sure that if we do that, that we're all in favor of moving forward with
With the face shields,
plastic
yes.
guards, so as not to prevent us or be delayed from reopening.
Yes, correct. And as Kelly mentioned, I mean, obviously, people can feel free to buy their own face shields, but we did already distribute. So we already have the equipment. Can we get a roll call now?
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Yes, you made the motion, Jessica?
I'm listening, I hear you.
Yes, I would like for you to amend it to rescind the plexiglass in place of, and substitute face shields in its place.
Yes, that is what we are doing.
Okay, see, it's hard to hear.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm trying.
Yeah, this is Jose here speaking. Yeah, I've tried to text you, Liz, in the chat, in the Zoom chat. I can hardly hear anything that's going on. It's really difficult to vote when you don't know what you're voting on.
Liz, are you able to chat him the current situation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if everybody else is having difficulties or not, but I know the YouTube feed is fine. No, I know. I don't know how to improve that.
Okay.
Let me see.
If you can hear what we are rescinding and you understand, can you just give me like a thumbs up?
I can hear a little bit, but not, at my advanced age, it's hard.
Am I allowed to pull this down to just?
I can hear the virtual attendees without a problem, but anything that's going on in person is almost impossible to understand.
And it might be a microphone, because Kelly, I could hear you really well when you were reading the committee reports, and then Jess, I heard you during the presidential thing, but now I'm not hearing as well.
Am I allowed to pull this down while since we're distance? I don't know what the rules are. Kira, can you hear me now okay? Is that better? Okay.
Yeah, better.
It's the double ply mask. We are looking to retract the purchase of plexiglass shields for the desks for the children and instead vote on having them be required to wear face shields / sneeze guards.
Okay, got it.
Okay, very good.
Jess? Can I just get a clarification? Do we already have the face shields? Or are we voting to use the 60,000 to go purchase face shields?
No. The face shields were already given to all of the students upon the first day of school. So,
Oh, okay.
can we do a roll call? Thanks.
Mr. Capagrasso?
Yes,
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes, but I would like to just add, if it's possible to get a single prototype of what you were intending to purchase, I think that's sensible.
So that's a yes.
Liz, is it possible to get a prototype?
I have one being brought next week, but if you cancel the order, you will not get them before the end of June.
Okay, then I suppose it's moot.
So this is the direction that most districts that are bringing back students full-time are going in, and they're in very limited supply.
Continue. Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes. Any other new business?
I just had new business, which part of it is moot now, but one of the Board of Education's goals this year is to work with key stakeholders in the continued development of an effective school plan. As the district navigates COVID-19 health crisis, and I should say this is a direct quote from the goals, as the district navigates the COVID-19 health crisis, work with key stakeholders to develop an effective plan that focuses on the health and safety of students and staff, embraces the diversity of all students, promotes educational excellence, and develops the social, emotional well-being of our students and staff, end quote. To advance such goal, I hereby move for a policy requiring that the district, through the superintendent's office, by March 20th, 2021, communicate to the Board of Ed the specific mitigation strategies that it will require to effectuate the reopening of schools on a 5-day per week basis in May-April, as per Mr. Moore's email of March 8th, 2021. And to that extent, while I indicated it is maybe now moot, to the extent that such mitigation strategies necessitate the need for the purchase of physical barriers, such as the masks that we've discussed, that such physical barriers be purchased and be in the district's possession by April 10th, 2021, so as not to delay an anticipated reopening.
Would anybody like to second that motion?
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes. Any other new business?
Yes, I have something, Jessica.
Okay.
The Patch just published an article that states New Jersey advances plan that could ultimately eliminate hundreds of school districts with regionalization across New Jersey. And Washington Township is on that list. In light of that, and to better be prepared and informed for this event, I make a motion for Jessica to set up an ad hoc committee in the 21-22 year to investigate, make recommendations on cost effectiveness and feasibility of the regionalization of West Morris Central High School and Washington Township K-8 schools.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Comment? Roll call?
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Can I just,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I should make a comment. It seems to me that's something that would come down from the state to the local levels, or perhaps from a county level to us rather than from the bottom up. I don't think it's unreasonable to be prepared to deal with that if it's proposed, but I'm not sure what an ad hoc committee on that issue could accomplish unless and until it happens.
Carmine, can you clarify, because I thought that we were specifically mentioned, our district. Can you clarify?
We always seem to be out of step. We're always $1 late. You know, we don't plan ahead like we should. We can get information. We can talk to the Board of Ed at West Morris Central to see the pros and cons of doing this. I mean, I can't see how it would hurt to have a discussion and plan for this, so in the eventuality that it happens, we're ready.
I agree, because I would think that this was not something that would happen overnight. It would probably take several years to implement.
Been talked about for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
What's another 30?
Can we continue with the roll call?
Mr. Kinney?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Abstention.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes. Any other new business? Okay. Public comment.
Okay, I'm going to start by reading some public comments that we received via email. The first one comes from Tara Pastigo. Thank you to the Washington Township Schools Administration and Board of Education for valuing the safety of our students and staff by following scientific guidelines during this pandemic. Your careful decisions, support of effective distancing and cleaning protocols has created a safe environment for our school community. I would also like to thank you for leading by example in regard to your professionalism regarding the negativity and criticism you have received by community members who do not support your timeline. I hope that people who are unable to accept the reality we face as a public school system will eventually realize how lucky we have been due to the dedication of the combined efforts of the board, administration, and staff of this district. Best wishes on continued success during this difficult time. The next comment comes from Corey Lynn Gutman-Condren. Good evening. I am a proud LVMS staff member, a thankful Cuccinella parent, a lifetime resident of Long Valley, and like many of you, an exhausted human being. I would like to take a brief moment to shine a spotlight on some of the enormous accomplishments so much of our community has stood together to pursue throughout the past year. As a thankful parent to a 3rd and 5th grader at Cuccinella, I am immeasurably thankful to the teachers and staff who have made school engaging and educational for them despite the nearly inconceivable challenge of delivering instruction as COVID-19 has necessitated. With the guidance they receive from their teachers, my children continue to grow and even enjoy this new version of school. Of course, they want nothing more than to be together again with their friends and teachers, but they understand that the safety for all prevails. So they do their best each day, just like their teachers model firsthand. Thank you, Cuccinella's teachers and staff. You are loved and you are amazing. We stand together with our Cuccinella staff who has made the impossible possible. As a proud Long Valley Middle School staff member, I'd like to start by thanking my students. They are the reason I went into teaching, and they are the reason I stay despite the myriad of obstacles and challenges. They know how to have fun on rainy days, smile in the face of adversity, learn, and even occasionally laugh at themselves and me, so we are all reminded not to take ourselves too seriously. Additionally, I'd like to mention and thank each and every parent or home support system that has shown their support by keeping their learners going, by reaching out to connect with us and troubleshoot solutions to logistically unprecedented educational challenges, and to say thanks for all of the wonderful positive support and encouragement countless members of our parent community have expressed in phone calls and emails all year. You have no idea how much that means to us as teachers. Finally, I'd like to publicly extend a heartfelt debt of gratitude to my fellow colleagues, supportive administrators, and board members. It is an honor working alongside such incredible, dedicated, and enormously talented individuals. You remind me every day that teamwork is the foundation of a strong community. We stand together with the entire LVMS community in the knowledge that what makes Long Valley great is our concern and support for one another, our willingness to uplift rather than cut down, and our positivity in the face of great challenges. These qualities that we seek to instill in our learners every day are ones that the vast majority of our community demonstrates by example. As a lifetime resident of Long Valley, I ask that we remind ourselves why we came to this town, or in many cases, would never leave. We stand together. Thank you, Corey Lynn Gutman-Condren. The next public comment is from Marie Pepis. Gentlemen and ladies of the board, as a taxpayer and also an employee of the Washington Township School District and as a WTEA member, I would like to express my disappointment regarding the comments being made by township residents and parents of our students at the recent board meetings. I am not a classroom teacher, but during this pandemic, since last March, I have observed teachers rising above and beyond to figure out new technology, managing students in the classroom and online and at home at the same time. From the various remarks I have heard during the board meetings, it seems that some residents and parents feel that teachers have it, quote, easier now, and that teachers do not want students back in the classrooms full time. Let me say that this is simply not the case. We want our students back as soon as safely possible, and we are doing everything that we can to get them all back, especially our most vulnerable students. Please let us work together for the good of the students of Washington Township. These are our children, and we all have the best of their interests at heart. Thank you, Marie Pepis. The next one comes from Jamila Campbell. I wrote this shortly after the last Board of Ed meeting, so forgive me if some of it is now considered irrelevant. I am here to say that I am very disappointed from listening to the loudest, angriest members of our community. You break my heart, but you do not represent us all. Many of you complain during these meetings, but show little to no compassion and offer no solutions. I hear people mentioning how they don't like our superintendent. So what? Give him the respect that his title deserves. You complain that we aren't in school full time, even when you have been advised time and time again that we are working to safely ensure re-entry. Did you know that other schools right here in Morris County have had to close several times due to increased COVID cases in the community? Perhaps they were too aggressive with their reopening endeavors. If you're going to demand that your children be in school full time, then you need to put in the work. You can't say you are against wearing masks to keep the community safe and demand in the same breath that school staff put themselves at risk for your children. Who's going to be at school full-time to teach your children if our teachers have to quarantine due to your lack of concern for our current situation? I feel as though some of you need to be personally affected by this pandemic before you understand what it means to take it seriously.
Liz, I think your mic's on. No, it's not. Liz, I'm sorry. I think your mic's on. We can hear you tapping. Is it just?
I apologize.
Oh, Justin. Sorry, Liz.
Proceeding with caution is most likely not the wrong thing to do. And here's a reality check for us all. We can't possibly practice the CDC's recommended physical distancing. We can't possibly practice the CDC's recommended physical distancing if everyone is in school 5 days a week. You complain that snow days aren't used properly. Perhaps you can become Superintendent Moore's private meteorologist, ensuring that he will always make the right call. Could the superintendent and Board of Ed be doing a better job? Possibly. There's always room for improvement. Could parents be doing a better job? Absolutely. Instead of showing our children that it's okay not to follow societal rules and strong recommendations while continuing to demand that our desires be satisfied, maybe we could choose to be better role models by following CDC guidelines and consider asking for a heart-to-heart sit-down with the superintendent and Board of Ed, and then presenting a few alternatives towards a solution for our grievances which could work for everyone. I am Black, and changes to the way Black history is taught at our schools matters to me. But if you don't see me publicly demanding for those changes on a monthly basis, you may want to believe that I am comparing apples to oranges because you think your child's IEP is on a different level than my child's color. But really, I'm not. My concerns are no more or any less important than yours are. Once we have voiced our concerns, be it publicly or privately, then we need to trust that they have been heard by our elected officials and will be addressed to the best of their ability. Continuing to publicly reprimand someone for not addressing your personal needs without understanding nor wanting to hear and understand what happens in the background to make the decisions is not going to help your cause. Ask for a private meeting, and there's nothing wrong with asking in a nice way and being patient with a group who is receiving disgruntled emails which must be combed through on a daily basis. With this said, I have one recommendation for Superintendent Moore and the board. If at all possible, consider creating a sign-up genius with 15-minute increments for times that you can make yourselves available for parents to meet with you privately. You don't all need to be present. Parents just need to feel heard. Thank you for all that you do. Many of us know that it is a challenging and thankless job. You continue to have my and my family's support. Thank you for everything. Your efforts are greatly appreciated. Jamila Campbell. The next comment comes from Amber McCann. Dear Washington Township Board of Education members, after watching the most recent meeting and being horrified and disgusted by the words, actions, and accusations of some other township parents, I felt driven to write to you all. As a parent and lifelong healthcare professional, I have been extraordinarily pleased with all the measures implemented in an attempt to keep our children, teachers, and staff healthy and safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. We are all, hopefully, in a once-in-a-lifetime situation, and so much of what we portray to our children right now through attitude, action, and refusal of action is setting an example for them. I would hope that if this community had been more accepting of the safety measures, and if the staff and teachers had been given above adequate protection, as well as the assurance and proof that the community was doing everything possible to maintain safety, that they would feel safer about being in the school buildings. Seeing families in town vacationing, having large gatherings, being out in public places unmasked, surely provides absolutely no reassurance. While we have opted to keep our 2nd and 6th graders home to attend virtual schooling currently, most in part due to the actions and disregard for safety seen in the community, we have always been more than pleased with the education, care, and attention that our kids have received within the school system, and we greatly look forward to the days of herd immunity and dramatic decreases in COVID cases that will reduce the risk to our family. My hope is that this email will give some small reassurance that your actions and decisions are understood, appreciated, and welcomed by some of us, in contrast to the vitriol that seems to be a regular occurrence at board meetings. Be well, and thank you. Amber McCann. The next one comes from John Shepard. I don't know if he wants me to read it because he's here. Okay. Dear Board of Education members and Superintendent Moore, thank you all for your service to both the community and to the district during these trying times. In anticipation of the March 9th, 2021 Board of Education meeting, I'm seeking clarification on the Board of Education's policy on the issue of returning to school 5 days a week. I understand that the challenges to returning to a traditional schedule are both dynamic and not at all within the control of the district. However, I feel that the Board of Education has not been able to effectively communicate, at least to my understanding, what their formal policy on this issue is. Simply, could you help me understand what your plan is to reopen the district schools on a traditional 5-day a week with full in-classroom instruction schedule for all the students in the district schools? And what objective or measurable benchmarks or criteria have been set to get us there? If you have made this public, I apologize, but would appreciate it if you could direct me to where I can read this policy. I would find it very helpful to see a roadmap to return to a traditional schedule. Thank you again for your time and consideration, and I look forward to your reply either in advance or at the March 9th meeting. And that is from John Shepherd.
John, it's good to see you. We did a lot of fine work together 2.5 years ago, so welcome back. You know, I think I've laid everything out that I can lay out at this point. You know, we're going to try real hard to get kids back, you know, in mid-April. The middle school has tremendous challenges. Number one, adolescents are more susceptible to COVID-19. Social distancing in small classrooms is going to be a big challenge for us. You know, we look at the different medical groups that are out there, and you know, they're even our own American Academy of Pediatrics is saying, you know, 6 feet. Now, that being said, as I shared in my letter last night, that can all change very quickly. It really can, if this situation continues to improve. At our last meeting, I said I wasn't going to be the superintendent that threw a date out there and then couldn't make good on the promise. But I know that the middle school has just tremendously more challenges than an elementary school does. You know, we're currently have children in 4 homerooms. We'd be splitting them into 5. Then that's an automatic cross-cohorting of related arts and physical education. These are things that Mr. Ippolito and Mrs. Schweitzer and I are grappling with. But at this point, you know, we could not announce that would be a reality for April. If we see things improve where we have an increased confidence level in that, and our school physician and local board of health concur, I don't believe we'd hesitate for a moment to move in that direction. The timing just isn't right for our middle school students, you know, at this time.
The last email we received for public comment was from Joe Coladarsi. It says,
Do you want to go, or?
would you like me to read it, or would you like to? Okay.
Well, if that's the last one, Joe, you might as
It's
well
the
just
last
start. Same rules apply. I'll let you know if you get to 2:30.
This will be quick. Yeah.
No worries.
Joe Coladarsi, Laurel Drive. Once again, I want to start by expressing how amazing the teachers, staff, and building administration that I have been working with, or that have been working with my 2 children have been. They constantly show their dedication and care, and I couldn't be happier to have them involved in the education of my kids. My children, like others, get so much out of being in their classroom and school that I sincerely wish that our district leadership found a way to have had full-time in-person instruction much sooner. This is especially since it doesn't appear, based on never directly referencing to the public the specific guidelines or restrictions that have been the reason they were unable to do so. So basically, I never really heard exact reasons why we can't be in person. If this is the case, then having our kids in the buildings on a limited basis has only been a choice, and our community needs to realize that. If this isn't the case, I ask Mr. Moore to clarify and cite specific restrictions that the district or schools were unable to meet that disallowed full-time in-person instruction. Again, the teachers, staff, and building leadership that my children have had, and I've had the pleasure of interacting with, have been phenomenal, both last year and this year. Based on the way the decisions have been made and communicated, along with what was just recently written about community parents on the WTEA website, I wish all those amazing educators had more positive and proactive district and union leadership.
You know, I think there are a lot of choices to make in a pandemic. Number one, the choice to follow the guidance and recommendations of the New Jersey Department of Education and the New Jersey Department of Health. certainly to create smaller cohorts to mitigate the spread and potential spread of COVID-19 within our community, and in doing so, keep our children and our faculty and staff as safe as possible, which actually enables us to keep schools open instead of necessarily having to shut them down suddenly. I think we did make a choice. I think we made a choice to proceed cautiously and safely amid a worldwide pandemic. No offense, Mr. Koldarchi, it was my first one as well. And as a community, we're going through this together, as is the world, as our families who have made sacrifices, teachers who have made sacrifices, and families who have lost loved ones. Our goal, first and foremost, is to keep everyone safe. And maybe I'll do things a little differently the next time we have a pandemic. Maybe I can learn from the first one. We made a choice. We made a choice that a lot of districts didn't make. We made a choice to have full days of school for our students. I don't judge the other districts. We just felt that our teachers are such talented individuals. We knew that we were asking a great deal of them from day one, and we couldn't be prouder of the outstanding effort and how far they have come, providing full days of school for every child of our community since September 1st. We don't stand alone in that, but we're pretty close. We also made a choice to emphasize safety, to ensure that the staff and children not only remained as safe and as healthy as possible, but as we know, when we keep staff healthy, we keep our schools open. When we keep our staff healthy, we keep their families healthy. When we keep our children safe and healthy, we keep their families safe and healthy. So we did make a lot of choices. We feel we made choices that have brought us to this point today. We are still in orange right now. Our own CDC says don't go toward any type of full-time return while you're in orange. We're going to look for improvements in that landscape. I'm very optimistic. We heard the mentions of herd immunity, of vaccinations. Did I interrupt you, sir? Thank you. Thank you. We're hearing a lot of promising signs, on this horizon of COVID. Hey, if we all had a magic wand, we'd wave it right now, would make it disappear. But right now, we can't do that. We have a plan to get our young children back to school, and we're working hard to make sure everyone is equipped and comfortable and ready to do that come mid-April. But it's the landscape that's going to make the decision, not necessarily the superintendent of schools.
Thank you. Any other comment? Public comment? Okay. Okay. I didn't see any other hands, so it's all you.
Hey, Jessica.
Yes.
Can you just make sure to remind people to speak as clearly as they can into the microphone? It's a lot easier when they do, like instead of being, I don't know, a foot or more away. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll do my best. How's this for a comms check?
Can you
Clear?
hear him, Jose? Is that good? Yes, they're saying yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. You want to
My name is Rob Waskis, 17 Fawn Ridge Drive. At the beginning of this pandemic, virtual learning was an understandable situation and a temporary exercise. I'm sure everybody remembers 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Just recently, the United Nations Children's Fund, better known as UNICEF, has called school closings during the COVID-19 pandemic a, quote, catastrophic education emergency. They further said, no effort should be spared to keep schools open or prioritize them in reopening plans. The superintendent mentioned the desire for a downward trajectory of the numbers. Carmine echoed that in his education committee report. Well, statewide cases have declined for 9 weeks in a row. The positivity rate has been trending down for over 10 weeks in a row, and hospitalizations have dropped for 14 weeks straight. We're now administering almost 400,000 vaccine doses a week here in New Jersey, and that doesn't even include the new J&J shot. What more are you looking for? How much more of a downward trend do you need? The nonprofit group Insights for Education conducted a global study over 6 months using data from 191 countries that showed no association between school status and COVID-19 infection rates in the community. So again, what's stopping you? I'm frankly shocked that parents and teachers aren't screaming at the top of their lungs to get the kids back for in-person instruction 5 days a week, when the data so clearly indicates that it's both safe and beneficial to do so? You could do it tomorrow, you know. This isn't just my idea or that of a fringe group of vocal parents. Your own education committee just reported that Washington Township schools have been successfully implementing the CDC's recommended layered mitigation strategy since day one. And that's still all they recommend for opening the schools. And by the way, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 3 feet of space between desks. It's on their website. The policy came out in January. Yeah. So what more do you need? You need me to drive my kids to school a couple days a week? Fine, done. Sign me up. I can even pick up a couple more on the way if their parents are comfortable with it, and it would help get them back into school. Our children are suffering. Anyone who parades out the trope that children are resilient should tell that to the parents of the 6th grade boy in Arizona who took his own life during his remote Zoom class back in December. Or the parent we heard from last month from our very own community who told us that her daughter lives in a pit of darkness. I haven't been able to forget that.
30 seconds.
So I'll conclude by asking you to not abrogate your responsibility to our children for another month or more. Open the schools for in-person learning 5 days a week. You can do it. You're just choosing not to.
I have no response to that.
Yep. All right, if there's no other public comment, I asked before, nobody put their hands up. Rob was the only one. Public comment, you can go first.
My name is Cindy Ruggiero. I've been a resident of Long Valley for 40 years. I wear many hats in this town. Most of you know me as a realtor, mother of 3, grandmother of 10, all of whom live in Long Valley and who will be educated here. But many of you do not realize that I was also a tenured teacher at the West Mars Central and Mendham High School, and an 8-year former member of the West Mars Regional Board of Education. So my comments come from a deep background in this town and from my experience in the teaching profession. For many years, the Long Valley K-8 educational system was a model for other educational systems in the state. The special education program that was developed here by Vicki Kelber, my neighbor on Barstand Court, was emulated far and wide. Buyers from in and out of state would flock to Long Valley largely because of the stellar reputation of the school system here. I say this from a personal perspective because over my 30 years in real estate business, hundreds of buyers told me they came here because of our award-winning programs and teachers in all of our schools. But we have lost our way, and it is largely due to the lack of decisive leadership. Our reputation in the K-8, especially the middle school, has declined. I have defended 2 buyers coming into this town, and I don't want to have to defend that. I know middle school is the hardest grades to teach. I taught at the Bernardsville Middle School for a short period of time. And when I was a teacher there, I received a letter because teachers cutbacks, and I was the one to go. Received a letter from a local paper, the Bernardsville News, from a 7th grade student who wrote, "Mrs. Field gave me a reason to respect, hope, and find myself in a world and time when respect and hope were hopeless in a 7th grade where everyone is in the world of their own. If Mrs. Field did not see what was happening to me that day, I would have committed suicide. I made a difference in a student's life that day, and so can you. You can positively impact the lives of our children, especially when child suicides and depression is prevalent as a result of this lockdown. There is so much more at stake than just preserving the property values, which will decline if reputation of our school system continues to decline in the K through 8. Keeping these schools virtual is sending this message. In conclusion, rise above your irrational fear and control and think outside the box. be leaders, open the schools, and teach our children to learn from the past and have hope for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Go ahead.
Testing.
You're good.
All right, good. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Washington Township Schools. No offense, I never want to hear that again. My name is Damien. I'm from Ryan Court. I want to thank the teachers for, this is my first time speaking at this. This is kind of nerve-wracking seeing people on a Zoom meeting and all these different things. Oh my God. Jill, I also wanted to thank you for your motion because literally I was going to stand up and ask for that exact same thing. And so I wanted to make a couple comments on that, which is I was also looking at board goal number 1. And board goal number 1 references that there's going to be a committee that oversees that. And my question was going to be, how often have they met? Who attends the meetings? What are the findings? And with the main premise of this going back to the September 15th and the October meeting, where Charlene Peters referenced what the Board of Ed's goals and objectives were. And I believe it was Laura Ann said something about clear and concise communication. And then Mr. McKinney, you brought that up in February's meeting, and I really do appreciate that. I think what we're all feeling, and I can email you because I actually watched every single video that you have posted. I listened for the community how many times they asked for just something simple, clear, in like an articulated manner, and I just haven't heard it. And so as you think about the communication plan, I think that that's the key, is we might be hearing something that you're not saying. And so I think when everyone asks for that clear and concise communication, I'm hoping that all the findings that you have are actually publicized somewhere. Because when they say that they're going to be publicized somewhere, we're not seeing the results. Whether that was Larissa, who in June of last year asked for the parent survey and all those results to be published, and they said that they would be, they still haven't come out. And then my last comment on this, and this is more of a logistical comment, is it does say that an annual evaluation is to be done every year by September 30th. That is not something that the community needs to hear about, but I think it is fair to know that the actual evaluation was done. I looked in the minutes from April and May of last year and April and May of the year prior to that, and I didn't see anything referenced that evaluation was done. So once again, I was just wondering what criteria that you might have as associated with that actual evaluation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to, well, how do we want to start this? I want to start actually by just saying that the communication committee, obviously we had new board members come January, so just realize that it's all new communication meetings from only January. But do you want to, Jill, do you know how many communication meetings offhand we've had?
I think we've had about 4. Justin is the chair.
Right.
But we've had 4 communications committee meetings, and we are, I don't want to speak for Justin as our chair, but we are looking to advance transparency from both the Board of Ed to the community, as well as from the superintendent's office to the Board of Ed, because we find areas of improvement in both aspects. So that is very high on our priority list. As Justin referenced in the meeting minutes from the communications committee, we do have a COVID dashboard. I know that there were questions from the community regarding the case count, so we want to be transparent with that. That's now posted. All of the communications are posted there. Mr. Moore said earlier that the survey results from the recent survey regarding the reopening are posted. I did look, they're not yet posted, but we will stay on top of that and make sure that is available for everyone to see. So it is it is the focus of all our meetings, is really trying to increase community trust, community communication, and again, communication from the Board of Ed to the superintendent's office.
Justin, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I would echo what Jill said. We've had several discussions with Jeff about clarifying the communication as far as the obstacles we face to get to full in-person learning. You know, within our particular committee, we're not, other than what we receive from Jeff, we're not meeting with school leaderships. That's Jeff's job, Jeff's role, and their decisions to make. Our job is to try and do the best we can to put a clear message out to the community. And I think as Jeff indicated tonight, the two principal obstacles that we face are the community rate and the color that it's in, combined with the physical distancing limitations we have within the classrooms. One of the things that the survey was designed to do to get a sense of how many people we can expect are interested in coming back. And I think Jeff gave that number tonight, around 1,300 or 1,400, I believe, out of 1,800 people surveyed, give or take. So I think the leadership, Jeff and his leadership team, need to process those numbers and assess how we can make it work and still keep some level of distancing and get community buy-in to the idea that it's not going to be 6 feet. The classrooms simply do not accommodate that. And so, to Joe's point, those are one of the choices we have to make. Is everybody willing to accept that? Hey, if we do it,
Let him finish.
it's going to have to be a certain way. So those are the kinds of things we're talking about. Those are the kinds of things we want to try to get out to the community in a clear way so people can understand where we're coming from. I do think the idea that it's a simple black and white answer, or that there's one checklist that has to be met before we can do it, I just don't think that's accurate. And believe me, I wanted my kids back in school months ago. All right, that's my personal view. All right, but I do not agree with the idea that there's a single checklist. We can just check boxes and say, okay, now we're good to go. I think every answer through this pandemic has defied clarity because things keep changing. One day we hear about a surge. One day we hear about things going down. So we need to keep our eye on the ball of getting us back there and doing the best we can to get there. And our committee's trying to make sure we put a clear message out to that effect.
Thank you, Justin.
And Jess,
I want to speak
Jess,
to...
can I just make one more comment?
Sure.
Sure.
Just, you know, we mentioned the numbers of how many people, but, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, my math is not great. But the specific results of the survey will be posted online for everyone to see. But I felt like overwhelmingly, the families in the community want their kids back in school 5 days a week. I think that the percentage was about 84% of families would send full-time. So while we do see a lot of common faces, we hear from a lot of common people, you know, those results, I mean, we're looking at those and it gives us pause to really consider the needs of the community and the desires of the community. So we hear it, and we're all working together to really do what we can to make it possible.
In regards to the superintendent's evaluation, and some of my older colleagues can help me out with this precise month because I don't remember offhand, he does get evaluated in a certain month, but then it takes months for us to go through it, and then Charlene actually takes us through it during a board meeting. So the minutes are there, if anybody remembers. July, I thought it was the summer, yeah.
So in his contract, it says April 30th, that's why I asked.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't have known that unless you were part of the process. It's just a long process. It starts April and then it gets pretty much put out there in July. So, is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Go ahead.
John Oldmixon, Fairview Ave. So something actually that you had just said when you brought up the fact, would we be okay with 3 feet? Something like that, why wasn't that put into the survey? It was a one-question survey, and it just basically said you want your kids to go back in person. And it looks like 85% of the people said yes. If there's more detail that you guys need, I'm just surprised that wasn't asked in the survey. I just want to also mirror what everybody else is saying. Why not just open up the schools now? When I hear mid-April, I'm assuming that's Monday, April 12th, or hopefully not, but the 19th. When we hit spring break, which is Monday, the March 29th through April 2nd, I think it's approximately 130 days the kids would be in school. I mean, is the science really saying that extra 5 days is really going to be, you guys are going to be comfortable with that? And then my last point is, in the last Board of Ed meeting, somebody had read the anonymous letter, and I think it was the Pit of Darkness, or it was a pretty haunting email, and I know the person wanted to be remaining anonymous. I was just wondering if anybody from the board or anything took action to try to help that family, because it sounded like a pretty desperate cry for help.
John, I always have to be a little bit careful when I discuss families, but I can tell you we always take action, and it's swift. Yeah. And if you'd like to sit down with me, I can actually share some of the things that we do in our district. We take intervention very, very seriously, and we got a great team of people to carry that out for us. Just for clarity purposes, it was very clear in that quick questionnaire that physical distancing would need to be compromised beyond that 6 foot. And I did reference various guidelines put forth by the various academies. As a point of clarification, the American Academy of Pediatrics speaks of 3 feet for elementary age children, preferably 10 and under, but they do list middle school as a secondary school. So they look at elementary, I can't even say K-5 any longer, it's more like K to age 10, and then certainly middle school and secondary school students are in a very different category.
Go ahead.
Hi, Diane Dominguez-Federa, Old Farmers Road School, a 3rd and 5th grader. Thank you. I think I wanted just to thank the Board of Education, parents, the stay-at-home parents that are teaching, but the reason that I'm actually here was because of something that came up recently with both of my children last week, that they were asked during class about stress and anxiety. The reason why I was quite surprised is because when we went into the hybrid mode back in March of last year, I and my husband had to pivot pretty quickly to put a plan of action into place since we're both full-time working parents. I've always taught my children that school is their job, the teachers are their bosses. The teachers that are here now know that they're the boss and they got to follow the rules and do the best that we can. And getting through the start of the year, the start of September, and being completely at home, again, I put together this whole program, stuck to it, dealt with stuff at work, my husband as well. And at one point, my son was talking about stress, and I'm like, are you kidding me? You do not get stressed. You get stressed when you get into college, and there's big decisions. Stress is for mom and dad. You just need to stay focused in your class and do the best you can, and we'll stay safe and, just stay safe and be respectful of everybody's situation and circumstance, not be mean and unkind. And what I witnessed from the videos from last month, and just people in general, I'll blame COVID. Everybody seems to be losing empathy and patience. But I guess why I'm here and speaking today specifically around, I've worked so hard to try to keep some sense of normalcy with anxiety and stress and not putting that on my children. And then I have the classroom, it's coming in on how do you handle stress. My 3rd grader, I had to jot this down, was recommended a book called A Little Spot of Anxiety to read. I already struggled to get him to read everything but Pokemon, and now he's getting told to read A Little Spot of Anxiety. And I know everybody's situation is different, and I respect that, and I'm all for it, but I think I need to have the conversation about mental health at this stage, because again, I just don't want those conversations and that going into the curriculum. And I think Carmine talking a little bit about it. We're all hearing about this pandemic and it's creating,
30
down the
seconds.
line.
30 seconds. Yeah,
Future, sorry?
Keep going. No, you have 3 minutes. You have 30 more seconds to wrap it up.
Okay, so my wrap up, is this going into is this a new
Okay.
curriculum thing? And, part of it, we're keeping them out of school. It's just going to create more of that. I mean, you guys are asking about it, but again, about opening up the schools that may help. And that's, what is the plan there? Is there a plan to put in now mental health, stress, anxiety into the curriculum? Is that what I heard earlier?
We have, Diane, there are specific standards through our health classes.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a lot of mindfulness, especially at our elementary levels, a lot of morning meetings to start the day as well. Our counselors here at the middle school, they run programs and obviously keep tabs on kids. They do that both directly and indirectly, in terms of their supports for families and students as well.
Okay.
We're actually going to be talking more about it. We have an upcoming education meeting. That's next week?
But this just started new, right? Because the parents, this is the first time, and being in the district in a long time, we've never had it actively asked during classes like that. It would be on a one-to-one
I see
special
what you are
case, not
saying. Yeah, I see what you are
openly a whole
saying.
topic during a classroom session,
Yeah,
correct?
I mean, what our teachers are doing is they're addressing needs as they arise, in the classroom, and they're trying to do it in a very open and honest way with children to help them cope. Pandemic year or non-pandemic year, these conversations do come up.
But
Okay.
it's not going to be part of the curriculum moving forward, I think is her question.
Part of the assessment, Carmine mentioned, that's what I made notes earlier, though. He says there's like some assessment going on now with
I
this as
just
well.
had a follow-up question. I was interested in knowing if this was a discussion that was led by the teacher or the guidance counselor, or have you seen it from both?
I believe it was both, and I
Okay.
believe it was across the district. I believe the social worker in school at Old Farmers, and also in classroom, yeah. And I believe it's going across all the schools, from what I understand.
A lot of classroom lessons.
So, I'm sorry, I think the question you're asking is if this is something we're building in the curriculum moving forward, not just a one-off.
Yes, because
Yeah, that's her
again,
question.
since I've been in the school district, this has never, ever, ever come up. And it was so aware with my children because we've been talking about it from the beginning on how to handle it. And I've had, calls with my friends who are in different situations, and I respect that. But I, as a parent, would like to know
Like
when
that's
those
part moving
conversations are
forward.
coming into play, right? Because it's kind of, here I am working one way to keep it, balanced and structured, and then it's just going against it. It's like, wait a second, where did this come from? So, that's all.
Thank you, Diane. It's good to see you again.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? I see you, sir, coming up. You can be next.
Mike Catano, Kim Lane. I saw some disturbing information today online that was posted by a district employee and the union president, and I would like to read that because it directly goes towards talking about opening up after spring break. So the quote that I'm going to read: I know many of you had questions about spring break and travel. I say go. If that is something you want to do, let your principal know, and that will be that you will be traveling. The district just wants to know and make sure we have enough staff to staff the buildings. You can just state that you'll be traveling to a place on quarantine, list and date you can return. You do not have to go into specifics. So, Mr. Moore, can you please explain how you expect to bring the kids back full-time after spring break when your teachers are being encouraged to go away to places under quarantine, and you're going to have to give these teachers 2 weeks off because they're under quarantine? And I'd like to also read another quote, and this was also put on a district public website. This small group of parents are fringe maniacs. They deserve no more attention than the rest of the township families we serve. They are just loud and disrespectful. It seems they are just loud, mostly clueless minority. Any person associated with our school system that insults parents by calling them a fringe maniacs or clueless minorities is not a role model for our children. It's almost like she's trying to put parents versus teachers. And you also always talk about the goals to kids' safety. Why was this never talked about when the flu was spreading every year within our school system? We all know the flu is more deadly for children than COVID. No one ever said a word about flu. No teachers ever called parents, the health people never called parents, said, someone had the flu in the school, you know, John's got to stay home for a week. No one cared. Now all of a sudden, someone's within 6 feet of someone that could have COVID, they have to be quarantined. And I just don't understand the reasoning behind that. And the 85% survey, the kids should be in school starting tomorrow. There's no reason to keep delaying this. You keep pushing it towards spring break, so then all of a sudden, oh, well, kids, you know, we got a lot of cases, now they can't come back. Now we're in May, and school year's gonna be over in a month. So, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You, sir, you were next.
My name is Jérôme Chevalier. I'm living on Turtleback. And I'm part of those maniacs, those 85% maniac, you know, that wants my kids back to school. And from training, you know, as a maniac, I'm very proud to make my decision based on science, on risk versus benefit, on facts. And I saw your decision, Mr. Moore, months after months. Some I couldn't really understand at all. Some others taken by other school districts that you ignored. And I want you to really to convince me tonight about the fact that you're not trying to surf the wave and take you to the end of the year, but that really you're working on bringing your school, kids back to school. And I want to ask you on 3 points, really. First of all, one is about timing that bothered me. On January 20, you announced, you know, the end of the virtual Mondays. Implementation 3 weeks later. Now you announced recently the fact that kids will be coming back full-time. Implementation 5, now 7 weeks later. We are 13 months into this pandemic. Why isn't it a plan already done and there is a switch that I understand? I heard you clearly about what you say that time, but normally, I mean, you should be able to say on Monday, next Monday, we start a new plan. I mean, for 13 months, there is time to organize yourself. And I really would like you to give me facts, you know, not general statement like you did. I'm trying to do my best, I'm organizing. No, give me facts. Why can you not organize it, you know, already on saying, okay, the day we start, the bus will come at that time, kids will be in that group, that's the way we'll do it. I mean, once again, we had all the time. Second issue that I wanted already to address is about medication strategy to allow in-person presence. I mean, we had last time you discussed about other districts and say every district is different. You also told us about the fact that the plexiglass industry is making a good business out of this crisis. Now you were talking about purchasing dividers in plexiglass. And I want to understand why we are now again 13 months into that crisis and we had to get the board making a vote in emergency about buying or not plexiglass dividers, or be obligated to cancel an order that will not be able to be reinstated this year because we are March, 10 or 11, and we are discussing about the dividers. I mean, I understand that in September that would have been an issue. Last point, so that since you're limiting me here, case reporting on surveys. After each of the Thanksgiving, Christmas, you made a survey. I'm a math guy, so I went into the statistic. I noticed that you had 2 groups, student, staff, and educators. There was an occurrence 5 times higher in one of the groups.
Times.
And second time, 2 times higher. Did you try to research why there is such a behind scientific study? I mean, why one group, the educator, is 5 times more presenting suspected case? I mean, scientifically, it's totally impossible.
Okay.
So the value of this study is really non-existing. So my question is, we are going into spring break. Are you doing again a survey with this quality?
Okay.
And will you close again our school for 2 weeks?
We're past the 3 minutes, so just let him, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Was there anybody else that had public comment? Once, going twice? Okay.
Hi. Tara Lagos, 30 Zellers Road. Proud product of the Washington Township Schools, proud teacher of Old Farmers Road School, 28-year veteran of teaching. I'm looking around, I had the pleasure. How's my Tyler? Good. Give him my love, please. Sir, your data was most impressive. Forgive me, I don't remember your name. Your data, I'm a data person, so I appreciate it. Mr. Kinney, thanks for bringing in the non-data where it's just such an uncertain time. I'm really just up here defending my town, defending my students, defending my family, and defending our reputation. And I applaud you. I want to go back to school full time, okay? I'd like to look, don't clap for me. Oh, no. Please don't clap for me until you've heard everything. I would like to look into that plexiglass because those damn face shields are a pain. I know that they're wonderful. Those poor kids. So let's look into both. And you're right, no kid has their face shield anymore. I think mine's in my closet. Let's look at the plexiglass. I think it's a great idea. I'm all for coming back to school full-time, doing it safely. I share your concern about the mental health of our children. I get it. I've said that from day one. I also have a concern about the mental and physical health of our staff. I know there are a lot of surveys. I get it. And as much as I love data, there are just some things you can't survey. I'm really up here asking to play nice. I'm not on Facebook for a reason. A, I'd be fired, and B, I'd be arrested. Okay? Play nice. I understand your concern and your concern. We teach our children better at home and in school. And the nonsense that has been forwarded to me by people, I'm emotional, for those of you who know me, has not just been disgusting, it's been downright embarrassing. Because this is not the Long Valley. Mrs. Ruggiero, my son, my husband, taught your son in lacrosse, coached him. I get it. You have a wonderful family. You're very, very well respected. But the nonsense that's going around, whether or not something was posted to a district website, though I don't believe in the crazies, but there's some crazy nonsense being said. And Mr. Shepherd, I love your Jack. You have a wonderful parent group of people that just come together for trying to do what's right.
30 seconds.
But sometimes the words that are going around by adults, by friends, by colleagues, by neighbors is 150% unacceptable. Unacceptable, you guys. Your kids hear it. And I believe in leading by example and saying you're sorry when you screwed up. You ask your kids, Miss Legos, you're like the first person who's ever said they're sorry to me. I say I'm sorry all the freaking time because I make a lot of freaking mistakes.
Time.
Cut the mean BS out, everyone. Because I love my town and I love your kids and I'm here raising my family. Please, we're so much stronger together. If you're gonna have that sign, hashtag Long Valley Stronger, together, we all gotta talk the talk and walk the walk. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Okay. We're going to move on to district distinctions. Our elementary, can you hear me okay with this mask? Our elementary students enjoyed read-alouds and selecting books to read as part of last week's celebration of Read Across America. The whimsical tales of Dr. Seuss were also enjoyed in recognition of his 117th birthday. Dr. Seuss's birthday is March 2nd, a date selected by the National Education Association to endorse the importance of reading. We also had the Long Valley Middle School student vocalist Piper Heike and Juliana Stingle, who were among 60 area middle school students who auditioned for the Morris Area Honor Choir Experience, placing 1st and 5th respectively, for their alto selection of the honor choral group. Piper and Juliana attended 2 virtual rehearsals with both middle school and high school singers before attending workshops with the 3 composers, arrangers of the pieces they studied. A highlight was getting to ask the questions of the clinicians and have the clinicians run the music with them all virtually. Deaky Sharon, known as the father of contemporary a cappella, was a hit, and he was heavily involved in the Pitch Perfect movies. The students have now recorded themselves singing their parts for a virtual choir recording video that will be coming out soon. I'd like to make a motion to go to executive session now. Can I ask?
You have to state the purpose.
Oh, sorry. We are going to executive session for legal negotiation and personnel matters. Motion? Can I get a second? Thank you. Roll call? Do we have the roll call for that? No roll call? Can we just go? Should we just leave? All in favor? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay. So we're gonna leave for an executive session and then come back when we are done
And take action,
and take action.
if you want to stick around.
You guys are free to stick around. It's entirely up to you.
Kira can read it. That's personnel check, up to you guys.
I know. Kira?
Oh, yes? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, 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 I just want to make sure you could hear me.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you.
Would you like to move personnel number 23? And can you please read it? Okay, hang tight. Don't read it yet. Okay.
Okay, sorry. You want me to move personnel item number 23?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do I have to read the whole thing?
Not necessarily. You can just move it.
I can't hear.
Yes, just move it.
Read it?
If you want.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, it sounds like from like a Peanuts cartoon. The telephone. It's terrible.
Kira, can you hear me?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, can you just read it?
Yes, I
Okay,
can
great,
read
thanks.
it. Okay, I heard that part. Okay. Personnel would like to move item number 23, whereas on February 2021, an employee of the Washington Township Board of Education, hereinafter referred to as the board, whose name is on file with the Superintendent of Schools office, was notified by the Superintendent of Schools that said employee was to be suspended with pay. Therefore, be it resolved that the board shall continue the suspension of the employee with pay pending a further investigation by the Superintendent of Schools and thereafter a determination by the board as to what further action, if any, shall be taken.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Capagrosso?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kinney?
Yes.
Mr. Kostenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Jose?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mrs. Muserino?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. DeSico?
Yes. Okay, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Yes.